We knew from the get-go we didn't want to make a sand movie. We'd seen that before in so many other films set in the desert or in Egypt or in what have you. It just felt like there was a lot greater opportunity here to take the iconic imagery and characters and structures that we know from Egypt and kind of say, what were they like in their heyday? What was it like in a time that we liked to pretend that when gods lived among mortals, what would they have made Egypt like? They would have made it a place worthy of them to live in if they were going to live amongst us on Earth. So it would be incredible structures. It would be massively visual and Edenic, and not just sand. It would be massive waterfalls and rivers and mountains and incredible architecture. It would have green in it. I mean, we wanted color in this film. We wanted to really take people to a different place that they'd ever seen before, but yet still check the boxes of those great iconic Egyptian imagery that we've all come to know, so that when you look at the pyramids again now, when you look at the Sphinx now, you'll never see it the same after seeing this film. And the way Alex always boiled it down to, which we thought was the perfect phrase for the defined kind of the mantra of the look of the film, was think of it as Planet Egypt. And that really kind of, solidified the kind of overall look that we were trying to achieve.
There's nobody like Alex Proyas who has the courage and the imagination to say, I'm going to go in there and I'm just going to recreate everything. I'm going to create a world of joy and adventure and imagination for everybody.
In the initial discussions, Alex's advice to me was anything goes, let your hair down, and Planet Egypt. And the last two words is what everyone has adhered to. And when I came in to see Owen and his designs, to see where we were, where the sets that we were within, it gelled. And it's just like, and those two words have carried through the entire film, and in our talk the talk of wherever we relate to anything design-wise on Gods of Egypt, it is Planet Egypt. It is not ancient Egypt.
It's more of a fantasy Egypt. It isn't tied down to sand and sandals. This is a rich and verdant, lush land. And some of the images we've now created of Heliopolis, where our story starts and finishes, it's what we all picture perhaps Egypt was in the days of the pharaohs. And if you ignored all of the sand, but you went to where they lived in probably some splendour and comfort, that's our kind of Egypt, but it's 100-fold. Our city is somewhat based on an idea I had when I saw the Parthenon in Athens years ago. It's on a big hill and there's another hill and another hill. I thought, well, what if we had 5 hills that made up Heliopolis? And we'll join those with like roadways or archways or like viaducts almost, but ones that you could walk upon. And then a central point has to be, we'll have a statue of Osiris, I thought, to start with. And I thought, no, we'll make it Ra, because that's our sun god. And so all these things sort of start to go across. And people start to do illustrations of my little sketches, and the town starts to take place, and Alex reacts to it well, the producers act to it and go, oh wow, this is kind of where we want to go and how it should feel. And it's never an instant process, it's bit by bit, and people start to do more work, and we come out and we start to establish where we're going before we say. While we were doing that, we were working with some people in America, the Aaron Sims Company, and they were developing up our characters, because we have a set character. And for a long time we had a really good-looking set, but for Alex he just wasn't ferocious enough or terrifying enough. It had to be something out of your dreams, or your nightmares. And eventually we came up with this sort of cross between a crocodile head and a aardvark, which the real set character is, and then we had something that really started to work. We then did Horus, who is a man, our Nikolai, who has to transform into this sort of almost biomechanical bird man, a man with wings. And then you go through this process of, well, should he have bird legs or should he have human legs? And in the end we decided, no, he should be a man with the falcon head and the wings. And all of those processes, they feel like you know so much now at the end of the movie that you wish you knew at the beginning of the movie, but then it wouldn't be as much fun making it.
Let's roll!
So one of the most complicated things about shooting this movie is we're shooting the entire film on soundstage in a sea of blue screens. So every single location that we're in, every world that our actors are acting in is being completely fabricated from ground zero. Every day, our actors come in, look at artwork and previs designs of what the scenes will look like, and have to kind of go on that journey in their heads when they're on stage performing.
I'm sorry I'm late. Shit. It's such a big day for the family.
One of the aspects of the movie that we knew from the get-go we had to do was to pre-visualize it. There were so many parts to it, so many things you had to think about, so many things you had to get in place before you actually begin production, that we had to wrap our heads around just the complete image of the movie.
We make these images come to life. Yeah. These pathetic cartoons, we give them soul.
I'd never done this whole thing with Previs. He had the whole movie made like a children's cartoon. But what was cool about watching the Previs with us was that you got a good sense of what it was he was aiming for. I mean, and also I think for him to see, okay, maybe we don't need these lines here. Maybe we can do with less or more. Yeah, it was, I learned a lot from that.
So the way we did that was to do it in a number of stages. In previous films, visualizing the movie, you do pre-visualization through storyboards, and you photograph the storyboards and you sort of get an idea of the sequence of events. Sometimes you animate the movie from a 3D standpoint, and in this case, Alex really does well working with actors. So we set up a performance capture stage, and this was on one of the buildings here on the Fox lot in Sydney, and we put a grid down on the floor, and it was very much like a chess game. You had actors who were performing, and Alex would take them through the blocking, and the 3D animators would look at this checkerboard and see actor A goes from this square over to this one, and then he goes from here to here and here to here and here to here. And so in the computer, you could actually take a figure of that actor, a representation of that actor, and move them, place them from one to the other, and just get a really quick blocking within hours of what that scene was like. And then they took that and started to animate the figures, and then start to build this animated version of the movie. So it was a very quick process, and one that allowed everybody, not only Alex, but everyone involved in it, to grasp what each sequence was, and the timings, and it's just invaluable. There's no way you can stress the importance of doing this, because then it becomes real and you really understand what this sequence is.
The tough part, not for myself, but for the studio and for the producers and Alex, the director, was trying to figure out what to do in green screen and what to build in front of the green screen. You know, some sets were quite elaborate and very intricate. Others were just us standing, you know, on a blue floor with blue backing behind us.
So Jeffrey, I want to invert this and have Nikolai come at you from this side, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So it just changes things a little bit. So you would still walk through here, and you're still heading over here. So.
Well, Ra's boat's a really interesting one. Ra, you know, he is the ultimate god. He's, in a sense, the father of everybody. And his vigil is to sail a boat which is pulling the sun. And I'm sure if we all look at the sun, don't look at it for too long, and the flicker of your eye, occasionally you see a little speck in front of the sun, and that's actually Ra's boat in my mind. Alex painted a great picture to me. He said, you know, because we had designed the actual physical boat, he said, but it would be really great if it had like solar sail, something that could be out in front, like a big spinnaker on a yacht. And I think that was a really great idea that he came up with. And the material that those sails are like the wings of a cicada. They've got all that iridescent quality to them. But the actual ship itself, it's kind of like a cross between a chandelier, being inside a chandelier, a glass chandelier, and a golden ship. So it's a kind of bit of both. And so to actually shoot this set, we built a big mirrored set, and it was all made out of acrylic mirror, so that it could capture all the reflections and all the blue, and then the visual effects department will actually put in the physical shapes, if you like, of what's there, but they've got they've essentially got all the reflections captured in the past. In our story, Ra is pulling the sun, and as he pulls the sun over Egypt, and Egypt, we are thinking of Egypt as being a place in the minds of the people who are in our movie. Egypt is as big as the area they've ever seen, so it's a disc. It's sort of semi-curved, but it's a disc essentially in space. And when you go over it during the day, as Ra pulls the sun over, at the end of the day at sunset, as he's about to go over the edge of the disc, he reels in the sun. He has a big winch and he reels it in, pulls it in, it goes dim and passes over into the underworld, where he fights Apophis, where chaos reigns. So it's a very kind of cool image. There's some beautiful, one of my illustrators, Marek Oakham, did a beautiful series of images for me of the boat over the surface of the earth, and all backlit and quite gorgeous. And then Pete Menzies, who was shooting it, he's just got some fabulous images of Geoffrey Rush on that set. And then Paul Eric's going to have to put the set into those reflections, if you like. So it'll be an interesting process.
Crawl back to shadow, you stinking worm! You shall never feast on my creation!
We want this to be, more than anything, a fun film. This should be something for the whole family that is a true action-adventure, romance, comedy, visual spectacle, unlike anything you've ever seen before. Ambitious, sure, but that's the intention. So one of the most exciting things about the film is to be working truly with a group of world-class artists, literally from around the world. We're using a truly international cast that has resulted in, this incredible family that is creating this unbelievable world.
Set.
Brother, good to see you.
And you, brother.
The script itself, the story, was a really fascinating story, and at the end of the day, you can have all those worlds that you go through, but you need to be riveted by the interactions between, the characters.
From set. Come on! Let Ra himself hear you!
Set is a fascinating villain. He is not just your typical evil, I'm going to take over Egypt bad guy. He has a very complicated structure within him. And probably the best thing about the character is the fact that we cast Jerry Butler, who just brings such an interesting, multiple amount of levels to the character. He is such an enthusiastic guy in general. He is gruff, he is crazy, he is funny. No one likes making movies more than this guy. And it just brings such an interesting spirit to set that really wasn't there initially. And working with him, we've kind of brought out a much more complicated character than we had to begin with.
I don't know if before when I trip him, just so there's a little bit more there, rather than what was the
I'm going to miss our little get-togethers.
Yeah, maybe say, I'm going to miss our little get-togethers. Right. Or as I trim go, I may actually miss our little get-togethers, but you're still no match for me.
Yeah, and then boom.
Yeah, and then he hits me, and then
yeah.
Now you're becoming a pest.
Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, it's fun to play the villain. I mean, he's the ultimate badass set. He's so incredibly dangerous. He's so incredibly angry, and yet it's composed. But I also wanted to put in there humor and vulnerability and sadness and loneliness, because he has all of those things, What I really loved is his unpredictability. Like what he does in this movie, even when I'm doing it going, did I really just do that? That's so insane.
You want to hide from me? Learn to talk less.
Nikolaj Coster-Waldau, who most people know from Game of Thrones, plays Horus. And he is sort of our leading man. And he's essentially kind of the perfect guy's guy for this movie.
Well, when I first read the script, I thought, that's a crazy script. How are they going to pull this off? I mean, I really like the idea of taking these amazing stories from the Egyptian mythology and then really shoot them the way they were told. Like the gods are this big, humans are this big, the sun god Ra will be in a big boat up in the sky and draw the sun across the sky. I mean, it was insane, and I couldn't imagine how anyone could pull it off. But then, of course, I knew it was Alex Proyas, and he's made some pretty spectacular movies in the past.
Action!
And I'd never done anything like that, and there was something. It was just a perfect timing. I've done all these character dramas, so to go and do something totally different was very attractive to me.
Normally when a bird lands on my boat, I kill it before it can shit.
In casting Ra, we knew we needed someone special. It had to be an iconic figure playing this iconic figure. And who better than Geoffrey Rush? He has a very Ra-ian presence. He is such a warm, gentle guy, but yet he gets up on stage and he just dissolves into this uber god that he is of the cinema.
Alex wanted us to rehearse, so we had a lot of readings with all the cast members, and so that was just an opportunity for me to talk acting with Geoffrey. One day he came like, do you want to see what I'm preparing for my part? So he's like taking a big picture of an old turtle, 1,000 years old. He's like, yeah, I don't want my character to be, godlike. I want it to be, I don't want to be my character. I don't want my character to be human-like. I want it to be, like an animal. So he found this, and I thought it was, it's fun. It's nice to see how, everyone prepare for the character. Sorry, I do a really bad impression of him. He doesn't talk like this at all.
Stay in my shadow.
Why?
Just do as I say.
Brenton Thwaites plays Beck, and he is a pretty new young actor on the scene, and we couldn't be more happy to have him. He is wildly enthusiastic, just works his tail off. He's in nearly every scene in the movie, and it helps that he's a young, energetic guy to be in this film.
What drew me into Gods was the fantasy element. Gods had a sense of magic to it, a sense of the fantastical that I've never really done before. I just thought it would be a fun opportunity to explore with those challenges. The CGI characters and the world in general was pretty appealing.
You may not control the wind, Zaya, but I think you could close a shutter. There weren't any very large parts left over in this, but there was one part of Urshu who, on paper, was ridiculously evil. And I've played evil people before, Some extremely annoying people think it's my stock in trade. That's not quite true. But it can seem that way. So when I read it, I just thought, it seems so just bad. But I spoke to Alex Proyas, and we talked about the possibility of making him a little bit potentially more comic.
And the one before, you actually smiled a little bit, which I quite like.
Okay, so if I can basically tell the story on the way there,
yeah,
I don't see why we have to do this.
Yeah,
but then,
can we do one more, please?
Yep. But it's ended up being quite a lot of fun, and it's made it more fun to work with Jerry in that way, because I've known Jerry for years. We've never worked together. And the thought of playing with him playing a god twice my size, is something I had to get over. But he loved it, obviously.
Hathor, played by Elodie Yung, she's the goddess of love, of wine, of music, and a hypnotic character.
She's a really strong character. There's a lot going on. I see her as putting different masks on. She would be truthful with horrors. You would feel the love. She would be herself as well with Beck. She wants to help him because he's got this true love for Zaya. So she would be herself like this. But when she's with Seth, she put the sexy mask on, and she's like, yeah, I'm the party girl. I don't care about anything. So she has different aspects that you would find, I think, in the mythology when you read all the myths. And then we try to to keep the essence and put it in the movie. So she's very complex, and that's just great.
Is that him? Them?
Of course not.
Then who are they?
His trusted servants.
What attracted me to it was simply that I was familiar with the mythology. And I thought it was interesting that somebody was doing a movie about Egypt and about these guys, and in particular this story. I think there's a humor in this movie that it's a weird tone. It's a good tone, but I didn't expect it to be, as funny as it is. So I'm happy that I did it to just sort of play off of Nikolai, who could obviously do very serious and epic parts, and Jerry as well.
Jerry, just take your hand slightly to your right with the brain. That's good.
Jerry just pulls my brain out in our scene. You know, that's you know, I don't see him do it, so it's like it happens. But I think it's cool to be in a movie like that that has that tone, because it's a challenging thing to try.
I got asked to audition from here, and I put down a tape in my lounge room in about 3 seconds and sent it off, and within a day I was asked to go and do a computer model of myself. I was like, whoa, that was quick, like mega quick. Loved the script, the whole fantasy side of ancient mythology of Egypt, but it was more like Planet Egypt. And, you know, the fact I get to play a goddess and fly is like, yes. Every girl's absolute fantasy.
Beck? Beck, you there? Well, I got sent the script probably like a year before I did my audition. And then I got it again. They're like, oh, you read the script ages ago. And I was like, So I read it, and then they said, Alex wanted to do a Skype call, and I did a Skype call with him, and he was so lovely and so like down to earth and Aussie. So I was like, oh, this looks like a great project. And
but she's going to end up getting, she needs to turn
I'll go to have a look
that way, so she gets arrowed. So she's going to end up, you're going to see her arrowed when Courtney's like that, right? So, and then she's going to want to fall this way. Yeah.
I've not shot with blue screen before, but so far it's been great. Alex makes it so easy, and having the actors on offset reading their lines and things helps. Yeah, literally it's just blue, you're surrounded by blue, but you see when you go around, sit with Alex and things, and them editing things in, and you're like, oh, it's like mind-blowing. It's nothing you've seen before. It's incredible.
I won't fight. I love you, brother, with all my heart.
The thing that attracted me to the project was Alex Price. With the whole technological movement that's happened in film, a bloke like Alex, who has quite an imagination, can now start to actually make the films that he imagines. And this is monsters and masses of people and big sets and colourful characters, and in the hands of a bloke like Alex, it has a real good chance of being pulled off.
Because the story is so strong and so grounded and the characters are so real, you're with them on this journey. And if you have that, it's gold, because you can go anywhere, you know. So I feel very lucky to be a part of that.
So even though our actors are, spending every day in this sea of blue, having to use their imaginations of where they're going to be in the film, at least they have been armed with these incredible costumes by our genius, costume designer Liz Palmer and her team. The amount of detail and research that has gone into, each thread on these costumes is truly incredible.
I had to know where they were, the hierarchy of the gods, and the symbols that they actually carried with them. And there were certain symbols that I actually stayed away from, like the Ankh. So it's just like Hathor, kind of is always sort of seen carrying an Ankh, that we stayed away from that because I kind of felt that happened after the gods, and I tried to keep away from a lot of hieroglyphics as well. So ours were more sort of adornments without the Egyptology.
I think we've had the most fun, to be honest, with some of the gods and the coronations and some of the background stuff. There's been lots of great fun stuff to play with, and we didn't have a lot of time in the beginning, but as time went on and we did fittings, we got more and more adventurous and bigger, with the whole idea of the gods being larger than the human beings. We started going, well, let's get bigger and bigger with the hair so we can help them get big and bigger shapes and bigger things, and getting to know what the sets and things were going to be, because initially you come on and it's all just, you walk onto the set and there's just, blue steps and blue poles and you go, oh, it's sort of quite different. And once the artwork starts flowing, you sort of realise what's going to be put in later, and you start sort of adding all these shapes and things, and you just hope it'll work.
It's only a question. I'm not saying whether it does or not.
I actually do think you're right. I think if we could just soften it a little bit more, like make it take a little bit
I think it
some
does
follicles out.
I think it's a good look.
Yeah.
Maybe it just needs a bit of heat, a bit of weight out of it.
Feels a little too soft.
Chunky. If you come in for a close-up, it could be a little thick.
Yeah, I agree. I think the hair looks fabulous though.
Yeah, okay, good.
Hair and makeup is probably doing 75% of my job for me as an actor. It's been absolutely incredible. I mean, the costumes are phenomenal. The workmanship that's gone into these pieces and the way they've realised them, they're beautifully crafted. Their fabrics, they've actually had their fabrics made. They're not even purchased fabrics, and they're bought from Switzerland and shipped over, and they're just beautifully made. Everything fits fabulously. Because everything's corseted and boned, you have to sit upright. The crown was heavy, so you know, I can only move a particular way. It's about that big, and it's solid brass, and the hair goes up through it, and I mean, the changes are phenomenal. Everyone's wigged, and you know, I think Geoffrey Rush is 5 hours in makeup every morning. I'm about an hour and a half, which is quite quick, really. And it's just a comprehensive vision from your head down to your toes. Costumes weigh kilos.
Most of films that you do, they kind of like, you ride up this, you know, wave, and then you kind of like hit a bit of a plateau and you come down, there's a little bit of a lull, then you work your way up again. This one has just been a tsunami. We have not stopped making, we're still making. I finish tomorrow, and we are still making.
And it's been great to see the actors working with her on sort of giving their own little personal touches to each of their wardrobes and how they could amplify certain elements of them or give their own special touch. Jerry, for example, he wanted a very specific design on some of his chest plates and that sort of thing that he felt like expressed who Set was the most. I thought that was just kind of cool.
We had him quite highly polished and regal in a strange way. And he brought it down and, you know, dirtied it up and gave it a bit of earth matter.
Although, then we're back into, you stop doing that?
I mean, I had a slightly different imagining of how they had with Set. You know, he's a man from the desert. You know, I don't want to look so great. I'd rather be in my armor. My armor is half metal, half leather, and I don't mean a bit of metal and a bit of leather. It is metallized leather. You've never actually seen it before, and it's because they wanted metal and I wanted leather, and it's kind of like it's just everything about. He's another dimension, Set. He just lives in that different place.
When we first did his show and tell, I was worried. We had a lot of designs set out. We had all, you know, elements and some costume pieces to try on, but it was like he was in a leather costume dress-up shop, and it's just like, can I have that with 3 teeth? Can I have that in, you know, red? Can I have? Does this come in blue?
And also crocodile skin. So the stamping on the figure was like crocodile skin and skeletal and a lot of tooth elements, just all dangerous and like a hunter, because he's a hunter. He's a warrior and a hunter.
In the end, he owned his costume. He brought a lot to it, and he, like Geoffrey, are really involved in that process of design.
Geoffrey, yeah, we initially started looking at him and what we'd do with him, and that sort of grew into like, you know, it's going to have to be a complete bald cap and facial pieces, and then the wig and all of that, and as he loves getting into that character and the things, and you know, the more we added, sort of, it became good. And I think he looks really good because he doesn't look like Geoffrey Rush, you know, so it's great. He looks like Ra, you know, and he's got all these little sunspots and flicks of gold, you know, that was, you know, we thought they'd come from the sun. And then, you know, the hair, we put strands of gold through the white hair too, so that we'd get all, you know, the whole thing, so he glowed sort of like the sun.
It might have been interesting if, I don't know if we've got a double or whether we could arrange it so that I picked the cloth up before I've changed.
I ended up using 2 terms. We had monk, character, and almighty. But when Geoffrey came, he brought a 3rd dimension to that, and it was really a collaboration between Geoffrey and myself and Alex that gave us the end product for his character. So he, with the monk, he grabbed that, and he saw the textiles and how down and earthy they were. So he said, wouldn't it be nice if all of his adornments, like his armbands and cuffs and his collar, his shoes, his belt, and even his crown were made of papyrus, leather, grass materials, and just a basic bronze and no gold. Then we decided that the crown, everything when he goes to an almighty character, he grows. His crown, when he puts it on, goes from a very small bronze, old relic of a crown to the beautiful crown that we see him as Super Ra. And his bracelet grows, becomes gold, the collar becomes golden and grows, and then he armours. So he gets a beautiful chest plate and belt, etc. So, and that worked really well, and he was really happy.
Is that a storm? There's no clouds. Sets hunters, riding their pets.
Horace is, you know, he's our golden boy. You know, he's really it's such an important god in ancient mythology and in our film, really, that he had to be this sort of silvery gold colour to him when he transforms from being a man. And Nikolai's colour scheme, in a way, he has beautiful skin, and I'm sure it was enhanced by Leslie in the makeup department. And Lizzie has him in quite a nice leather, masculine breast coat and skirt, and it all kind of fits together really nicely.
He was tricky. Out of all the characters, he was the hardest hurdle to jump, because he had to first be in a coronation, so he was kind of like done up in regal attire.
He's got his feathers and his long cloak. He looks, and he's all golden and shiny, and he's very pleased with himself there. The idea, of course, is that you see the wealth, you see the privilege, the power. That's what also the costume helps. That's the story the costume helps tell.
And in the initial script, in the tomb, there wasn't a change. He kind of like was dishevelled royal attire, which was hard to transition him through the journey of being a year later, you know, does a god get new clothes?
The rest of the story, he wears a very basic outfit, which is kind of like the god's version of going on a long trek.
So to get him looking godlike, for most of the outfit, that the costume is for his hero outfit through the journey, through most of the film, that had to be the key costume for Horace. It had to look tough, it had to look vulnerable, it had to look broken down, it had to go through water, it had to fly, it had to do everything. And in the end, I think we nailed it, because it ended up being like a leather undergarment of that he wore to the coronation. So it was good. We just took the bling off, and it worked.
And 3, 2, 1, lift. 3, 2, 1, shoulders and walk.
It's making a movie. It's magical. I really don't look like this, and I'm like, please do something. 3 hours later, I'm a goddess. So there's a lot of work from, you know, the makeup department, the wardrobe department. They did an amazing and incredible job.
With Hathor's character, I wanted to almost create a nude body. Being PG-13, we had to be careful and cover strategic parts of the body. With her, I kind of like everything was based on like a bodysuit, a nude bodysuit, and we beaded in the strategic places. And the cape was her main god-like element. We developed this cape that we had printed in Switzerland, and it's all beautiful tattoos printed on this cape. The underneath part of the cape, fabric, is actually printed in copper, real copper. And apparently it's the lightest fabric in the world. It weighs 5 grams per square metre. So when you lift it with air, it's just like it's in slow motion. So it's very, very wafty. So Peter Menzies, who's the DOP, he said that it works a treat. So he's very, very happy with the cape. And it did work a treat. We had it specially pleated. And each of the ends of the cape are like a finger. So when it comes to life, it's like she's caressing, the cape caresses and hypnotises.
So that helps, you know, to have something like this.
And Alex likes it, so that's what I'm most proud of, is taking, you know, something from conception to on the screen.
The good thing about Australia is it's such a wonderful place to shoot. It's very comfortable. It's a beautiful city here in Sydney. The local talent is incredible, and bring a real passion for filmmaking and a great camaraderie, you know, here that, you know, that we definitely see in the States. But it's just nice to, if you go this far away from home, that you feel it again. We feel very, very at home here and very welcome, and that's been great.
I think we have very good crews. We've got good facilities here as well, but the main thing is crews, and it's the people that you work with that make a film happen. And you know, I've been particularly lucky on this movie, Gods of Egypt. I've had great supervising art director Ian Gracie and his team, really great people to work with, and then they consequently have good people as well. And you know, you can't do a movie by yourself, and from the very top, from Alex down through us in like kind of a pyramid, all of those, we all feed off one another, and I think it's the personalities and the qualities of the technicians that make it a great place to make a movie.
Yep. This film is beautifully designed. Owen Patterson and his crew have done just a brilliant, brilliant job in designing this world. And Pete Menzies Jr. has also done a brilliant job in photographing the actors and the environments. The way to shoot a film like this, because they have such large environments, is to shoot it with limited sets, because so many of the sets are built digitally. So what Owen and Ian Gracie did in the art department is build sets that were just big enough to in front of camera, be able to be oriented and understand where we were, for the actors to have a place to be, for the director to understand how everything got put together, but not so big that they got in the way of all the digital work that happens outside of it.
Honestly, it's just like doing a play. I mean, like, if you're doing a play, you're on a stage and you're talking about stuff that's actually not there. You know, if you're doing a scene that's supposed to be at the lake, you know, you're looking out in the audience and there's no lake there. Most of it is just us, you know, pretending to see stuff that's not there.
It's good for imagination. It's not like being in an independent movie, very realistic. No, everything's blue. Sometimes you talk to crosses, you know. So it's a good exercise. It's different. I like it.
Who is it?
Behind the actors, behind those smaller sets, are either blue screens or green screens. I'm often asked, why do you pick green over blue? Well, the reason is because when you're actually putting an environment back there, whatever color that screen is, you take it away and you put your environment in. So if you're putting a green screen up, you have to take the green out. And this is a film that has a lot of gold in it. Gold has yellow in it, and there's a lot of yellow in green. So when you take the green out, you also take the yellow out. So that gold that looks so terrific in front of camera now becomes this weird ochre color, and it just doesn't work. So we picked blue because there's no blue in gold, and it could maintain its fidelity. It could look just brilliantly gold after you took the blue out and put those great backgrounds in. And so that really was the driving force between that color and that choice. And it's very special material. It's not something you can go to a fabric store and get. It's very pure. And there's no, it's pure blue. There's no yellow, there's no other colors in it. It's not sort of blue. It's like real blue. So that's what costs the money.
So we are in Centennial Park in Sydney. We still have the blue screens, as you can see. Blue screens, a lot of blue screens on this film. But it's nice for us to be a bit outside.
My magnificent bloody hounds!
Today we're shooting the scene where Seth tries to pay the soldiers to go to war. So he throws coin at the soldiers to go to war against Nephis and the other gods. So yeah, and I'm sitting on the litter.
And 3, 2, 1, lift. 3, 2, 1, shoulder.
My litter's huge. It's very comfortable. There's 20 slaves holding me like this all day, so it's quite an experience. Never done this before. Love it.
When you're shooting against blue and in such a background that's void, you really need to see everything together to understand how to frame it and how the actors are playing out in that environment. So one of the challenges of doing this kind of work is coming up with a technique to allow the director and actors and cinematographers, camera people, to see what it's going to look like, or approximate view of what the final imagery is going to look like with the environment behind. as you're shooting.
You see what you're working with in reality, and then you watch a playback and you can see it. They put the landscape in, obviously the quality isn't anywhere near what it will be in a year and a half.
The whole film was pre-animated, so you could do a scene and then go and see the animated version of that scene instantly. The French special effects guys sit round the corner and they're actually rendering the scene as you go, so you can get half a mock-up.
We went to a company called Solid Track out of Paris, and they have a system, it's a real-time tracker. So as the camera moves this way, it knows that that point that it was looking at over here has now moved over here. And when it moves over there, it tells the computer to take the 3D background that we created in Previs and incorporate that in with this movement and move it around appropriately, track the camera, and then we can mat those together so you can frame accordingly and you can look at it and you get a good sense of what it's going to be. And it's just an invaluable tool. It's the only way to do this kind of work because you really have to do it in a very particular way, and this was a great tool to have on set.
Tell me, why'd your father choose you to be master builder rather than one of your brothers?
I suppose because I proved to be the best, my lord.
As I shall prove to be the best of my father.
Probably the biggest challenge with the entire film is the fact that we've committed from day one to shooting this film in such a way where our God characters are going to be literally larger than life. They will be approximately 9 feet tall each, where our mortal characters will be their actual size.
I think that was a really interesting contrast, and it created enormous physical challenges or practical challenges for the director and the director of photography and Eric, the visual effects, to actually be able to combine. How do you shoot? Because all of our people, even though they're playing a god, they're really only 6 foot tall, or somewhere around that. So there has to be a separation so that we can have Beck appearing to be a 6 foot man and Nikolai or Horace appearing to be a 9 foot god. So the practical side of it is pretty huge, really, and many things have to be built twice.
When you watch the movie, it's established early on, and the amazing thing is that you kind of forget about it. It just becomes the way it is, which is the way it should be. You shouldn't think about it. But to shoot that, to accomplish that, is so difficult and so complicated. We would have, early on, there's a scene in The Tomb when Beck first meets Horace. We had 2 identical sets, one in God size, one in human scale.
So it's built for a 6 foot man who's playing a 9 foot god, and then we would oversize the set by approximately 1 to 1.15 so that Beck would appear to be small on that same set. So you'd build 2 sets.
Horace, just a couple of questions. Where did you get the rainbow umbrella? Why do you push me so hard as I'm trying to save you?
In doing this, the most ideal way, just purely on a compositing level, would be to shoot them separately. You shoot one and then you shoot the other, which just doesn't work in terms of performance. You need to have them in the same room talking and interacting with each other. So we were shooting with the Dragon cameras, and the Dragons are 6K, so a huge amount of resolution. We're using these 70mm lenses with the Dragon, so we have this super duper crisp, high resolution image. So we can take a figure and then enlarge him or her, enlarge them to a pretty large degree and keep the fidelity. So we decided that we would do 2 cameras, 2 next to each other.
So with one camera, you could shoot Beck. The other camera, you could shoot Nikolai. Both the same shot, and both of us in the frame, but you would only use a little bit of that frame, and you would only use that half of that frame, and in CGI they would put them together.
He should have taught you to get off your ass and get your own water.
So we could have both of these figures in focus, and you could keep the scale. One of the things that really betrays trying to cheat a giant and a smaller person is that the foreground giant gets soft. And when it's soft, it looks like it's small. So by having these 2 cameras, we're able to keep everybody in focus and keep the scale. So we use that throughout the movie.
It's going to be really challenging for our visual effects team to go in and take those scenes and dial down Beck to his size and dial up Horace to his and put them in the same scene acting together, fighting together, sometimes carrying each other.
I can't withstand their venom, not as I am now.
Then I guess we should run.
Run?
Mortals do it all the time.
There's also a scene when we're running from these giant snakes, and I lift up Beck, and I run with him. And we had these, these giant treadmills, and we were running and jumping.
Treadmill.
Doesn't seem like a particularly exciting thing, but it was quite useful for Alex to be able to use the treadmills to get a lot of walking and talking or running sequences without having to build massive sets, because a lot of that's being done in post anyway. Been able to get people running and jumping and doing all that action stuff without actually having to have travelling cameras and all that background for real. Yeah, that was quite useful for them, and it was a good experience for us, saying we hadn't done a whole lot of treadmill work. On this show we built 4 treadmills, 2 large ones which were about 4 metres long by nearly 2 metres wide, and they were to enable the actors to run and jump and move all over the place and have the freedom to move and not feel like they're going to fall off the treadmill. I appreciate the fact that Alex pulled the crew together, great crew, and got them here to shoot in Australia, so thank you, Alex, for that.
Hey Beautiful is at the end of this run.
So I'm running to get there, so
yeah,
it's more...
Hey Beautiful is going to be a close-up that we're going to do somewhere else another time, just down there.
There's been a lot of creative license. I think it's all worked, and it's Alex who leads us all where we're going to go and directs us, and he's come up with a really great script, I think, with the writers, and hopefully visually it will help to explain everything that's going on in the background.
The movie is just packed with action. There are tons of great sequences, some of which I'm really excited to see.
By the way, we have 2 huge fights, 2 set pieces at the beginning and at the end. But in the rest of the movie, there's such incredible action all the way through.
The approach that Alex wanted to do on this one was actually to do a lot of, let's say, motion capture, a version of motion capture, where all the fights were pre-choreographed, captured, and pre-vised. So their approach to how they were going to shoot it, because it's a very complicated film.
There was no storyboards on this movie, it's all previs, so sort of previs takes the place that storyboards used to. As they're using the previs, they're cutting the previs in with what they've already shot to sort of complete the scenes, help them work out what shots they're doing, and also helps us see that, okay, well, they need that little bit, and that's going to involve a rig from us.
And action!
Because of the size of the gods, and we have humans, so you've got the god size, which was a great discussion in itself, trying to work out what size God's going to be and what size humans were going to be. So they had to look at all that through their motion capture and performance of the fight work and such. So at the time I wasn't available to actually begin with Alex to start all that process, but I had a gentleman, Tim Wong, who I'd worked with on another film for a number of years.
First and foremost, I think my first conversation with Alex was that he wanted for me to help design a fighting style or characteristics for the lead characters in the film. How Set, Horace and Beck, how they would move differently and how visually their kind of fighting style would be different.
Action!
So what Tim did in early days was put together the fights and choreograph the fights and go through the whole motion capture process.
And cut there.
And that was the first step before we even started shooting, and that happened months prior to the beginning of shoot.
And action!
There are a lot of fight sequences, and they're quite complicated. Glenn and the whole team, and my stunt doubles, Steve Davis, they were just, I mean, they've done so many massive films. Most of the crew came from, they just done Mad Max and they've done Lord of the Rings before. I mean, so that was the level of, the quality of these people.
When we've been at this now for 2.5 months straight, training, and I've done a lot of my training with Nikolai, which is hard because we're both filming, so But we did a lot before we started filming. We always get time together to develop that understanding and trust.
I mean, try and hit me a little bit. Okay, that's fine. Is that hard? No, it's great. It's wonderful.
And that thing where you just start to know each other and you do the moves and you hurt each other and you learn that, okay, he's not out to, but I'm almost hitting him. He's like, ooh, that was good. And then yesterday he had to whack me in the back. He's like, right, here we go. It's like, here we come. Bang!
By the time we got the actors, we knew which weapons they were fighting with, and earlier on we'd kind of worked out their fighting style and what their techniques were going to be, so we could concentrate when they actually got here on actual specifics.
One of the great things about the stunts in this movie is nobody knows how they fought in Egypt. The stunt guys tell me that they pay homage to some traditional type of Egyptian stick fighting that they had, and I forget the name of it, but I don't quite know where that fits in. But because we don't know, you say, what's going to look amazing?
All the lead actors got along well with the stunt guys, got along with their stunt doubles, got along with Tim. They were easy to deal with. And what was really important for us with our actors is that if they have this confidence, feel comfortable with the stunt department, then they have more, to me they feel like they have more of an input, especially because, a fight's a fight. But if you've got a character that characterises their moves in a fight, it makes a fight so much different.
After I've done this, whoa, go like this. Walk off like that. So you can put your own interpretation and your cheeky little moments, because I really wanted, sets. This is one of the great things about playing a villain. He's such a bad boy. So when he's fighting, I love it,
I looked up to you.
Of course you did. So I was finding all little tricks that I could do. It's like, yeah, come on, let's go, catching it, poof, let's go. Spinning it, I had this spin that I do with my arm out, which again was hard because the thing's so heavy. But as I walked past him, I managed to do a whole spin in one hand with a 7 foot long, it's 6 foot long, that my scepter. Spin it around and catch it just after I've hit him. There's so many cheeky moves. There's a lot of personality in the fights.
The fights were fairly complicated, and because there was integrated wire work in this fight work, we had to do a lot of it in sections.
And drop! A lot of wire work, because we're gods.
They were really keen. They wanted to be involved, they wanted to fly, they wanted to do as much of the action as they possibly could. We wanted that to happen. So the guys actually were physically capable and had enough coordination within themselves to make our wire work so much easier. They had to do leaps, they had to do falls, they had to fight on wire works, they had to get pulled back out of shot on wire, and the actors did an excellent job, and I think that was just testament to how keen they were in getting it done and their physical ability.
So pretty much Brenton's going to pretty much go off your timing for the kill. So rip his legs out like we talked about, walk over, smash him in the chest, okay? Smash him in the chest.
So well rehearsed.
Yeah. Well, we're going to rehearse soon. Smash him in the chest. Step the left foot up, and I think that's when you might do your line. You're still no match for me.
You're still no match for me.
Yeah. At his throat, you're still no match for me. Nikolai replies with, you're right, I'm just the bait.
Can I say, when you say, I'm just a bait, I'm going to say, I don't know what that actually means, but I'm just going to go ahead and kill you anyway?
That's great.
Okay.
Look up to go stab him. And as you're coming down, basically, Brenton's going to take your timing. Okay. We've got Ryan there in blue, who's going to hold the spear, so you can let go, turn to see Brenton, and then start your transformation before you fly up.
Oh yeah, that fly. I have worked on the fly. Have you done that? I've done that. Yeah, that's
good if we can see one of those on this rehearsal.
I'll show you one. I'll show you one. I just need to get the feathers.
I've now been sword fighting for 9 days straight. It was supposed to be a 5-day sword fight and a 5-day sword fight, and they put them both together. And yesterday, we just finished 5 days of a crazy opening sword fight in the Coronation. Like non-stop, every kind of spin, kick, smashing into walls. And we're talking 12, 14-hour days of doing this. And then they said, right, you're going into the next one. And the day before they start, this sword fight was already hard. You're spinning backwards and you're swinging this thing. And they went, that's where you're doing it. And we're doing it on stairs that are so steep that when you walk down those stairs, you're literally like, watch where you're going. Because they don't, if size 11 doesn't even fit on it. And now I'm having to go, boom, boom, spin back, spin round, step down, and there's marks, but you can't look at the marks, and you're falling all the time. I had to have my ankles strapped.
And then I have, an eye patch for most of the movie. And you know that thing when if you hold one hand over the eye and then you reach for something, you kind of miss it. We did have one special patch made for the fight sequences where there's a tiny little bit of netting so I could see a little bit, tiny little bit. But that was very important because if not, I would have stabbed someone to death long ago.
This end fight should really be something pretty spectacular. And then, like I said, then you look at the backdrop, like you even just see one still, and you're like, this is so stunning. So I think that's shaping up to be pretty powerful.
We have a lot of confidence with Brenton when he has to do his work, so we'll give him more to do.
Brenton was probably one of the most athletic young guys that I've kind of ever had to kind of deal with. I think he had a quiet confidence that he knew that he could kind of deliver it on the day, and so over rehearsing was never going to, he didn't really ever want to really over rehearse much.
We talked about having kind of like a parkour nature about the character, that he's always quick on his feet and he can scale buildings and get out of situations and things like that. And I had a great stunt double, Blake Linzel, who was the best parkour man in the world. And so he would, work with me on certain things and certain roles. We would go over stunt sequences weeks in advance, so I would feel comfortable at the time.
You might get some actors who want to rehearse it, whereas Brenton, he kind of gave it a couple of times and be like, yeah, okay, no, I'm good. Yeah, no, I'm good. We would build these quite challenging parkour type kind of leaping and bounding and grabbing and swinging kind of obstacle courses for him. And he would kind of do it a couple of times and be like, okay, yeah, I'm good, and we were like, okay, we're actually planning to do this for a good hour. And he'd kind of like 15 minutes, he was done. So, no, it just meant that we'd have to kind of think of other things for him to kind of do and keep him busy and things like that. But that's what I mean. But when you first kind of met him, you're like, okay, well, I hope you can. But then when we did start shooting, you're like, yeah, it's fine. He's got it. He's got it. Yeah, totally.
Working with Alex before, his mind and the way it works with live action and the CG world and the way he can mix it and blend it makes it a more real feeling. It's not like all of a sudden live action and now CG. Just the way he actually ties it together is really interesting, and I think he's got a great brain for that.
Well, what do you do with the eyes? They're in my mouth. Look like good.
I still feel it went amazingly well. While there were challenges, the actors totally stepped up for this film, and their training that they'd done had all helped and things like that. They were able to make those small adjustments that I would always throw at them. So to piece that all together and make it work, I think that's probably something that, I can't wait to kind of see it. Yeah.
It's not just a story that is being told that's grand, but you have environments you have to create. You have to create ancient Egypt, and you have to create characters that are at different scales throughout the movie.
There's an artistry and a poetry visually to this movie with the CGI elements. It's important to them, as they say, to always try and enhance the story and the performances, never take away from that. And I love the way they talk very poetically. It's like, when you say, tell me how you do it, they go, what? It's hard sometimes to put into words because it's intuitive and it's a feeling. You go, this feels good. It's an emotional response that you have to that world that they've created.
I'd never done a movie at this scale or with this kind of extensive. I mean, the whole movie is really created in CGI. All the visual, all the world is created.
For the actors in the film, myself, it was quite challenging to create what's happening around you, and the specificity of every CGI element around you that's non-existent was challenging, I guess.
Towards me, Nikolai, just as much as you can come this way.
I'd done green, blue screen before, but I've never done it to this extent where it's every scene. Of course, you know what they can do. You see these big movies all the time, but to actually be part of it and to get an understanding of just how complicated on a technical level it is to shoot these movies.
You look glorious, Lord. I know.
So there's a lot going on just logistically, but also story-wise. There's just so deep and expansive that it's daunting to begin with. So there's an enormous amount of work in this movie, obviously. And to do it, you need to distribute it to multiple people, multiple artists, and multiple companies that specialize in this. And so we chose, there are two companies here in Australia. One is Allura, who's out of Sydney and Melbourne, and also Rising Sun, who is in Adelaide. They're great companies that have just a number of different things that they do well. Rising Sun is great at environments, they're great at effects work, which is particles and flowing water and things like that, of which there's an enormous amount to that. They were chosen, and they just have a great aesthetic sense as well. And Allura also has a great aesthetic sense and a huge team of artists both here and in Melbourne. And so they do a lot of animation as well. That's one of their specialties, as well as environments and things like that. That's terrific. It's a great looking shot.
Yeah, it's going to be a cool shot.
It's going to be a very cool shot. So we were able to funnel a good chunk of the work to those two houses. Then there's Tippett Studio, who's in Berkeley, and they are great animators. They came from a background of stop motion animation, which evolved into computer generated animation. And I love the work that their studio does, because they really understand weight and timing and all of that. So they're doing the Sphinx, and they're doing also the Jackal and the Falcon fights in the Coronation. So they're doing some huge animated sequences in this movie. And then we're also working with Rodeo, who's in Montreal, and Rodeo is great at environments and great at hard surfaces, and they're doing Raw's Boat.
At least you know how to keep quiet.
I don't know words for that.
Things would be different if I could dwell amongst my children in the Garden of the Nile. It is my burden to fight the demon Apophis night after night. Egypt must never be destroyed by chaos.
Raw's Boat was really interesting on the stage side, and also will be extremely interesting on the post-production side. Because the ship is a mirrored surface, and it's reflecting the stars, and it's reflecting Geoffrey Rush and Horace and Beck, it needed to have a surface that actually reflected. So we have a mylar type surface, basically a hard mirrored surface that they can walk on. And you can see the reflection. So if I'm looking at you, I see the reflection of you at the same time, something that's essential. You can't really fake. You need it in place. And it also allowed us to reflect blue screens that were behind there. So you would be totally against blue because it's reflecting the blue screen back there, and I can isolate you and put you in the boat. So Rodeo Effects out of Montreal is building the ship, and the ship travels through this ether, sort of the space ocean, if you can imagine it.
Allow me to fill my flask with these waters.
The waters are not mine.
There's a sequence where Horace goes and gets some of the water of creation to bring it down to Earth. And so that will be interesting in creating that, because there's no water really there, but you want to feel that there's water there. There's a viscosity to the environment as we see it. So it's traveling through space, but it's also traveling through this water. So one of the challenges here is to make it not look like a spaceship, but make it look like it's a vessel on this water-type creation of life surface, but in the atmosphere and air.
Is that a storm? There's no clouds.
Scene 52, the burial grounds. This is a scene that has everything in it. You have gods and mortals. You have goddesses on these giant cobras that are chasing our heroes.
I mean, they're enormous, and then all you have is like a tennis ball at the end of the stick, too. So you have to use your imagination.
You have giant structures that crumble in front of everybody. You have fire coming out of the cobra's mouths. Pretty much have everything. So this is a really exciting sequence and has been a lot of fun to shoot. We photographed it out in Centennial Park, which is close to the studio here. So it's all exterior lighting. And we built some of the tombs, and then we extend them digitally. And then we have this rig, this gimbal rig that our goddesses are on.
We have a small gimbal happening down in stage 4, which is snake gimbal. It's to recreating the movement of the serpents that Anat and Astarte ride. So obviously the whole snake is going to be built, in post, in CGI world. But to get the actors having that motion of slithering and sliding on top of the snake, we've got a little motion controlled gimbal happening there.
And then we take that movement and we tag the animation to it and make it all move together.
So we had serpents, we had fighting, we had running, we had jumping, we had wire work, we had falling pillars. I think I think we had a kitchen sink somewhere in there, but maybe not. But anyway, it was just one of those things that were on and on and on, and it was really interesting dealing with it because there were so many different elements.
This is a scene that really had to be visualized in utmost detail.
Even though that scene was quite heavily prevised, it still does change and develop as we go along. We have to bear in mind that we do have these huge cobra snakes of size and chasing our characters, and occasionally you'll put the scene together and then you'll realise, well, look, no, we're missing an action beat from that particular snake or whatever that the fire breathing element that may be involved, which can lengthen the sequence, but then you may have to trim somewhere else. So it's a constant situation of refinement.
We're now 1 week to go before we finish photography, and we're still pre-visualizing some parts of the movie. And it's not really pre-viz now, it's sort of post-viz. And so I guess you could call it, that's a better term for it. So now we're post-vizing scene 52, where now we have more of the live action in place, and we can see the animation of the cobras, we can see how it moves together, and that informs the edit and how it gets put together.
And action. Trespassers in the house of the king. Answer my riddle, or cease to be.
The Sphinx is a really interesting character. It's Sphinx as we know it, but it's also Kenneth, our main actor, as the face.
I never was. Am always to be. No one ever saw me, nor ever will. And yet I am the confidence of all who live and breathe. What am
So we scanned his face, we put it in there, but we've made it all of sand, and as it moves, it will crumble off, and it will move in really interesting, unique ways.
Wait, I have it! You are tomorrow!
Oh, bother. So to pull all these characters in is quite a task. I think one of the interesting things with this film is that we get the chance to make a world, our world, and it isn't an accurate ancient Egypt, but it is an ancient Egypt that's really fascinating, and hopefully people will love it.
When you read it on the first script, it's impossible. It just can't be done, and it's very daunting. But once you put your fingers around it, once you wrap your head around it and start to move the pieces, then you can see how it can go and actually be created.
You can start pushing a little bit earlier, I think, if you can get a little bit of a jump on him as he stands.
It wasn't until I saw it just recently that I fully understood what he was going for. It's quite something.
And how was Horus, the king-to-be, preparing for this auspicious event?
Who's mightier than the son of Osiris now?
You fought well.
So I'll toast you. Well, you didn't fight that well, but I'll toast you anyway. Do not ever waste wine.
Lord, the coronation is this morning.
Just one little drink.
Lord of the Air. Already crowds press cheek to catch a glimpse of you.